time, I am going to officially welcome you all everyone to the webinar. I am really excited to hear Yoav. Yoav Sagi, who is our guest presenter tonight. I will say, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lawrence Casimir. I work as part of the philanthropy team at the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel, which is Israel's oldest and largest environmental NGO, formed back in 1953, which is about 10 years before the 10 years before the Parks and Nature Authority got off the ground, and 35 years before we ever had a Ministry for Environmental Protection. Our mission is to protect Israel's open spaces, which we'll hear a lot more about today. Its wildlife, its historic, its biblical landscapes, our biblical landscapes. This week was Parsha Lech Lecha, and I have this. Many of you know I have a 6-year-old, and so this is like the week that Abraham was told to go from his homeland in I guess Iraq to Israel, to our land Israel now, and he was living around Beersheba. So our biblical landscapes are very resonant this week. So today we're going to do things a little bit differently. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. I'm going to bring Yoav back in. So this week we're going to do it more as an interview. There you are, with this man here, Yoav Sagi. So if you want to just write questions in the chat or in the Q&A, then I will ask Yoav the questions as he's talking, as we're conversing. I have a few things that I'm excited to be asking him about the history of SPNI and Israel's environmental movement. And arguably, there's probably no one better to ask than Yoav here. Before we get into introducing Yoav, I'm just going to remind you all that we'll be back again in 2 weeks' time for a presentation about what on earth is happening in Jerusalem, and all the really couldn't make it up plans which are being put forward by the government and the municipality, including the cable car and Ferris wheel, and also Ein Lavan, which they're trying to build on the springs outside the city. Remind you all that we have branches in Canada, the UK, and America. So if you'd like to make a gift, you can do you can do so and get a tax deduction. And now I'd like to introduce Yoav. So I'm just going to briefly go over Yoav's absolutely unbelievably impressive resume. This is no exaggeration to say that Yoav is really one of the heroes of Israel's environmental movement. It says here that, well, my notes say that Yoav started working for SPNI back in 1962, and he was a guide in the Galilee. He established the Hamaron Field School in 1964. From 1977 until 1986, he was our CEO. And then he went on to become our chairman as a chair of the board. He was part of the negotiations for the peace treaty with Jordan, developing the environmental appendix with his counterpart, which was the environmental appendix to the peace treaty, which was signed in 1995. After leaving SPNI, but he went off from becoming chair of SPNI to founding the Open Landscape Institute, which we call in Hebrew Machon Desha, which was founded to develop policy tools to preserve Israel's open spaces. One of the great successes of the Open Landscape Institute was fighting for the creation of the Open Landscape Fund, of which 1% of all land sales in Israel go into this fund, and it is used for environmental projects, for conservation projects of open spaces, and it is probably the major source of funding for most conservation activities in Israel. I will also say that Yoav received the Israel Prize, one of Israel's most prestigious award, in 1980, and also has a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Ministry for Environmental Protection. I'm sure there are lots of things that you would like to ask Yoav, and I will do my best to ask these questions to him. If you want to write questions in the Q&A, it's probably better. We'll do Q&A or the chat. I'll try and keep up. But Yoav, welcome. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much. I can see the participants. Will they see them?
No, we don't see them. It's a lecture, so you're just lecturing. You can see me, and they can hear you, and they'll tell me if they can't hear and see you. But it's we're not doing a we're not doing a meeting here, so it's a little bit less interactive, unfortunately. But otherwise, we'd have too many people asking questions all at once, and it would not work. So, oops, you're okay there? So Yoav, I guess I'm just really honored to have you here. You really are honestly one of the heroes of Israel's environmental movements, one of our elders. So I guess the first question, this is obviously not a small question, but how has environmental protection in Israel changed over the last 50 years?
Okay, first of all, thank you for the your words. I can look about on the nature conservation, environmental conservation in Israel, maybe nature conservation, in several periods. The first period was when the SPNI, the Society for Nature, was very small and have no whatsoever authority, and there was no law for environmental and nature protection. So the work was done voluntarily through persuasion and through campaigns. And the very issue of conservation was very apart from the concept of the Zionism in Israel that put in focus the development. Development everywhere, the more the better, and with no connection or consequence to nature conservation and the environment. Due to the mission of the Zionism,
Yoav, can I just interrupt you? Is the window open or something? Because you're a bit. It's like a breeze. There's like a wind on the microphone.
How is now?
Better.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, let's stop for now. Yeah, better. Okay, they're all saying, yeah, yes, we're happy. They're happy. This is why we don't see them, because otherwise they probably make rude gestures at you.
Okay. It's okay now. You can hear me?
Yeah, I think so. They'll say if there's a problem.
Okay. But nevertheless, the campaign, even though well, like looks like mission impossible, very few people against the whole mission.
Yeah, you're still like really staticky. Some people are saying it's better, but like I can still hear a little bit of it's like wind in the background.
What is the share?
And like it's a bit like windy. It sounds like you're like outside.
I don't know what it is. Okay, I will try again.
All right.
No good? Doesn't work?
Yeah, I think that's better. I think that's a bit better, yeah.
What did you say?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, come closer to the microphone. I think that's better.
Working?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. I hope.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's I think it's your microphone. I think your microphone is you're good. You're good. Let's talk. It's fine when you're not talking. So you could just type, and I'll just write. I can do both parts, but
okay.
that will help anyone.
Stop me if it's so this was the first period, and it was changed in the early 60s when the Society for Protection of Nature managed to pass the nature conservation law, nature reserves and national park law, and to establish, and then was the nature authorities, was the nature protection authorities was established. And the main focus was on establishing nature reserves and national parks, which was very important. And nowadays, more than 20% of the country is protected. But most of it is the desert in the Negev. And the nature reserves in the northern area are very, very small. And the major change came about in the 80s, 1980 and afterward, when we discovered or we understood actually that the country is too small and the national reserves and national parks are too small to maintain and protect the nature and the biodiversity and the special landscape of the country. And here was a major change that we led in the SPNI and later on at the Open Landscape Institute of the SPNI, when we actually understood that we need to protect every piece of land which is still open, even though there's no chance that it will be totally protected as nature reserve or national park. And this is a major strategic change. The other change was that we understood.
Yeah, you're still the background noise is still there. Can you? Maybe can you move the microphone? Maybe it's the speakers are like picking up the microphone.
The microphone.
Yeah.
The microphone is connected
to your computer. Of course it is.
I can try something else. 1 minute.
Okay, here we go. Oh, that went really well. What do you think? That was magic.
What?
That works. That was really good what you just did.
Okay.
Well, no, now it's windy again.
1 minute.
You on so I would say Spotify. What's the old Napster trying to download stuff? Oh wow, it's I just heard thunder. I can just saw lightning in the back out my window. Gonna get
Is it
now? It was, and now it's windy again. That's better. That's good. That's good.
Good?
Yeah. It was. It is. It's good until you speak.
How is it now?
Yeah, better.
Okay. So this was one of the strategic changes. The second one was that we understood that we have to change the game. Because even though we were very successful in campaigns, which was like a mission impossible before, looks like mission impossible before, we understood that it's a kind of a game that we cannot win with only campaign. We have to change the whole concept of the development. the concept of the development, which was kind of, I call it development nature. We have to change the development nature, and we have to get deeply involved in the decision-making process, which means in the planning, in the land administration, and in the management of the open farming land. This was a major breakthrough, and since then we gained a lot of influence. We are members in the planning authorities, in the nature, in the land administration council, and we work together, but very deeply in the main decision making processes.
Okay, so did you find it? Did you find that people were receptive to your approach? That hiking's always, I'm sorry to move my screen. That hiking's always been, you know, part of the Israeli ethos, even from like the first immigrants to Israel. You know, they had the whole concept of discovering the land and conquering the land, like a very European, German relationship with the land and the hiking. Did you find that, you know, that even though people loved the land and loved going out to nature, obviously we're picking the wildflowers, did you find that people still you understood the need to protect the land? And was it an easy battle, or was it going uphill?
The situation is absolutely better than in the beginning. There's a lot of achievements in it, but it's still decision makers are not so sensitive to the environment and to nature conservation. And the main interest is still in development everywhere. But there was a major change of the very concept of developing and putting urban areas and settlement everywhere in Israel, due to the campaign of or the campaigns that we held and others held. In our recommendation for how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And even though that we have, as I said, more than 20% of protected area, in the open area, open land that is not protected, it's still a struggle. But we are having understanding from the decision makers, and we have influence to try to change it. And there was a major change, but it's, you know, it's always the way that there is a change, and there's those who are pushing against it. And another thing that is very tough is the real estate community. And the whole concept of the decision maker and the governments in Israel now is concentrating very much in the housing crisis, and they want to pay the environment have to pay for the decision, and we are all the way on the struggle policy that will change. It will change. There is a change, but
sure. So I have a couple of questions here from the audience. So I'm going to ask Michael first, because Michael's question first, because he came in. So Michael asked, did Earth Day, I guess the original Earth Day in 1970, make any waves here? Did it have any impact? Yoav, your computer has fallen on the floor.
Ask it again. I didn't hear you.
Your computer's sideways. I can't actually see you.
The what?
I said your camera's fallen sideways. It's a very attractive view of your computer desk. But the question is, did Earth Day have any impact on, did Earth Day have any impact in Israel, the original Earth Day in 1970? Yoav?
What is the question? What
Did
in the 70s withdraw?
Did Earth Day, Yom Kador Haaretz, have any impact?
The withdrawal?
Yeah, did it break through here, or was it just like an American thing? Did it make a difference here?
You ask about what happened when we left Sinai?
No, about Earth Day.
About what?
About Earth Day, Yom Kador Haaretz in 1970.
Earth Day. Yes. I think, yeah, absolutely. It was a change, and actually, it was a beginning of the change of the attitude of people. There was at least one Knesset member much interested in it, and he did quite good work. It began to penetrate to the consciousness of the public. It took time because you know it took time to the people to relate to what we call the brown environment. People were very like very much to protect flowers and landscape sites and so on. Not very much near the home, and we were able to get thousands of people to come to hike in a nature site that was endangered by pituach, by development. The environment penetrated a little bit slower, but nowadays the awareness is quite good.
Yeah, I'm just going to turn your screen off because we can see basically we're sideways. So I'm going to share my screen instead, but we can still hear you. And the audio is really, really good. So another question we had before is what would you find? What do you think was the most successful approach to presenting the idea of protecting nature? Like what do you think had the most impact? Like what approach do you think worked the best? Like was it education or touring or just campaigning?
It's a combination. I think that you hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you. We can hear you fine. It's just
okay. This is better this way.
Yeah.
Okay. It's all the combination. You know, the SPNI from the beginning put on its flag, on its goals, two major objectives. First of all, of course, nature conservation, which was enlarged to environmental conservation. Second was education. And third was research, collecting data and actually develop on the base of science and data that was gathered in the field to base the concept of conservation. So the main objective still remain conservation, but the other side, and mainly the education, was a backing, because it was a need to change the concept and the consciousness of people who came from all over the world, from totally different childhood landscape, that could not really appreciate the real nature and landscape of Israel. You know, you can imagine someone who come from Russia or East Europe and used to live in a landscape of forests and rivers and so on. And he come to the Jordan River, which he was praying to and was longing to, and see a small creek compared to the Donau and the rivers in East Europe. So it was very necessary to get people to know the area and to feel it and to get connected to. And many times when we went to decision maker to try to persuade them in something, his daughter or his son may have been a guide in the SPNI, and he always actually educated him about it. So it is working together, and the sympathy that the SPNI gained from the outdoor education was a very, very important tool to achieve the conservation goals.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Yoav, I want, because I'm looking at the time and I see that we're already halfway, and I promise, and I want, and we talked so much about in promoting this webinar about when we went to Washington, or when you went to Washington to talk about to campaign against the Voice of America. So I would love to hear the story. I've already heard it from you once, and I would love you to share it with everyone. The story about about our campaign against the Voice of America.
Okay, actually, that was one of the most complicated and worldwide campaigns that the SPNI ever held. And the story is so that sometimes in the 85, the United States authorities decided to that they want to build a station for the Voice of America and the Voice of Europe in the Araba Valley, in an area that was very sensitive. And there was a great push directly from the presidents of the state on the prime ministers of Israel, three of them, starting with Bush, the father, I believe, to do it. So first of all, when the pressure was there, we demanded from the Planning Council to make sure and to decide that there is a need to do environmental impact statement before any decision. And we managed to pass it in the Planning Council. And this actually, at the end, was the very thing that made it give us the chance to win the case. But the pressure was there, and they had no choice, and they started the impact statements. But because of the pressure, the government pushed the council, the Planning Council, to make a decision before the environmental impact station. Actually, because we object this project altogether. It was very damaging one. It was a fantastic, huge area and instruction. We said, many antennas, height of like the Eiffel Tower, and there was also a threat on the migratory birds that fly through this area by hundreds of thousands, hundreds of millions every twice a year. So they decided to do it anyway, and we took the government to the High Court of Justice against the decision, and we won. We won, and the High Court decided that they have to wait to finish first the impact statement, and they cannot start the instruction. In the same time, I organized a caucus of the 5 or 6 main federal environmental group in the state. And we went together to the Congress. There was a hearing in the Congress that I came, and one of the people from the settlement over there. And we have to actually fight there with the head of the Board of International Broadcasting, Forbes, Michael Forbes Jr. And he came to the hearing and said everything is okay, as the impact segment was done and finished. And I was the one who had to say that this is not right, it's not true. Anyway, there was a campaign worldwide. We turned to the IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, and we passed a resolution over there that against this instruction, the plant. And it was almost anonymous of all the delegation, except of the U.S. State Department delegation. That they were almost the only one that were against it. To make the story short, we managed to get to Nixon just when he get to the position of he was elected as the president. And through some bird watchers that get to him, there was he had a advisor by the name of George Stephanopoulos, and through the bird watcher, they got connected with a Greek community in the state. And Stephanopoulos actually brought the message to Clinton. And one of the first decisions that he got was to actually kill the plant because of the environmental pressure and concern. And of course, not only because of this, was also actually the plant wasn't needed anymore because it was intended to be a part of the Cold War, and the Cold War didn't exist anymore at that time. But the momentum of the money, which people that was allocated for it, it was about $500 million, was so strong that they didn't finish it and didn't stop it until the decision of Clinton.
Wow. So I understand, Yoav, that you actually went to speak to the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
So I read in a book that that you managed to like go in and decorate the room. Can you talk about that a little bit?
The House of Representatives wasn't able to cancel the plane. One of the congressmen over there, it was very with us, and told me that when the money was actually allocated years ago, the Congress cannot actually stop it. He said that it's like taking back the tooth pass to the tube, and actually the only one who was able to stop it was the president.
Wow. So, did you meet President Clinton?
No, we didn't meet him, but we meet a lot of congressmen and of the House, and actually we had a very good lobby over there of about I believe 15 congressmen that work with us, but I think that the whole campaign the campaign was very loud, and it appears also the hearing got very good coverage in Washington, and it did its work.
Great. Just people saying how interesting that they remember the Voice of America Tower, and they remember the campaign, and some people never heard this story before. So Yoav, while we have you, I get so many emails from people who said they first learned about SPNI, Chevra Lahagnat Teva, when a long time ago, because they went hiking with us in the Sinai. So we used to have a field school in the Sinai desert, and you were CEO when Israel withdrew from the Sinai. So I'd like to ask you about SPNI in that era, about how SPNI came back to, about guiding SPNI through the withdrawal, through the peace agreement, and how you secured the hiking trails in the Negev.
Actually, SPNI, we had 3 field schools in Sinai at the time that we were there. One in Ras Muhammad, very on the tip of Sinai, and one in the high mountain, which is a fantastic area, and one near El Arish, Gaza. And when the agreement was signed, actually we had to get out and to leave the field schools over there. And so we did. There was an attempt, actually, that I headed to try to work with the Egyptian in the field study center in the high mountain of Sinai. And there was some negotiation with the University of Ismailia, and for some minutes it looked very with a good chance, but it didn't work at last, and we actually went out. One of the problems was that the Israeli army, the big army that was located and trained in Sinai, had to go to the small Negev desert with all its powers. And there was as I told you before, actually the Negev desert is about 60% of the area of Israel. And it's not inhabited. So actually this is now, after Israel is so crowded in the north, it's a habitat, the place that you can find pristine nature and animal life. And there was and it's areas that people want to hike very much with SPNI and without the SPNI. And there was a threat that actually all the Negev will be closed by for military training zones. So we managed a campaign and we went to the Knesset, to the parliament, Israeli parliament, to the Knesset, and to convince them that they have to put aside areas that will be reserved, protected, and will be open to hikers and to tourists and tourism. It was quite a bitter campaign because the army really didn't want to give any piece of land. But we actually organized a caucus, a quite strong caucus in the Knesset, and we managed to bring it to a discussion in the security committee, which usually don't do this. And we went out with a decision that actually with a kind of instruction to the army to put aside environmentally sensitive areas and to enable people to hike and to do tourism, even in the area with our training zones, in weekends and holidays and so on. So it was an interesting campaign, quite successful, but of course we lost a lot of areas. And also there's a good cooperation between the SPNI and the Nature and Park Authority and the Army. They are quite sensitive today to these issues. Even in the areas that are used by the Army as training zones, there's a cooperation and care for animals and as much as possible.
Okay, I'm gonna just ask. I'm personally gonna ask one more question of Yoav, or one more area to discuss. So if anyone else would like to write in the chat, everyone's very, very quiet, which means they're listening intently. That's normally what that means. So I'm just going to say anyone who wants to ask a question, now's your chance. But Yoav, this weekend, Israel is marking, the 25th anniversary of the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, and it's tragic. But I was wondering whether you could share some of your recollections of working on the environmental annex to the peace treaty. That's not something I was aware that you were involved in, but I have thought that would be really, really fascinating.
Yeah, I actually represented the Environmental Protection Ministry in the peace talks in Washington, D.C. It was done simultaneously with a secret negotiation that we were not we didn't know about it, but there was a long several months of discussion. I dealt with environmental issues with a partner from Jordan, and actually we got a very good understanding between the two of us. A little bit even we were faster in getting to understanding than the rest of the issues that were dealt in the committees. and sometimes they even, slow us down because some other issues wasn't solved yet. And actually, the Annex of the Peace Treaty speaks about connection between ecological corridors and nature reserves. There's a chapter about the Gulf of Aqaba, Gulf of Eilat, how to prevent damage from oil spills. And there was a chapter about restoration of the Jordan River in the area that we share the Jordan with Jordan. There's a river with Jordan. And because at that area, actually, the Jordan River quite polluted and with very low amount of water. So there was, and after that, there was some work together for many months, how to do it. Unfortunately, actually not much was really done out of the decisions. There's a good cooperation in Gulf of Aqaba and Eilat. The Jordan River plan was not, didn't get very much forward. And maybe it will be done later on.
Okay. Well, we can only hope that we can manage our shared resources, especially water, in a mature way where we work together, because ultimately it's not a zero-sum game. That we need to, if we manage the water together, we'll both get more water. So it's sad that we can't work together. I've actually had I guess I have two last questions for you. One is from another question from Michael about about I guess an environmental party in the Knesset. Do you ever see, Israel doesn't have a very strong green party or an environment party. Do you think that's going to get stronger? Do you think there's a chance of that in the future?
I suspect so far, people in Israel are interested. Several places to it. People in Israel are very much engaged, with the global politics and the relations with the Palestinian and the countries around. And there are not enough voters that will support a Green Party. Maybe in the future, when we hopefully will solve some of the problem around, there will be more chance to it. SPNI in principle doesn't get into partisan or doesn't support any partisan party. We try to work with all the parties, and in some of the years we had people from left and right and from every side of the political map supporting us and serving in our caucus. Sometimes we managed, if you go back to the Voice of America issue, we managed to get 3/4 of the Knesset member from all parties to sign a petition to the government against the Voice of America. So we work with everyone. We, of course, are involved in politics in order to promote conservation issues. but not necessarily in accordance to specific party. And we sometimes, in Israel, it's very, very difficult to be neutral in the main issues, main political issues. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when we fought against a settlement in a nature reserve in the West Bank, the leftist party liked very much to join us, but we concentrated mainly in the rightish party, in those who really in favor of it, to support us, because they were also in the government. And there was a campaign that we even threatened to take the government into the Supreme Court or Court of Justice against building a settlement in a nature reserve. And we won the case. It was very tricky for us to do it, because it was kind of getting just into the main issue or quarreling of the political parties in Israel. But we managed to be stuck to the point, and actually we even didn't. We threatened to file the lawsuit against the government, but we told them that if they are going to change the plan, we of course won't do it. And since there was very sensitive, afraid from such a case, they actually changed the plan without the need for us to really go to the court. Although we would have gone to the court if we had to do it. Another issue of the court, I'm getting back to the Voice of America. I told you about appeals to the High Court of Justice in Israel. In the same time, in the state, we had a member of the board of the SPNI, the American Society of Protection of Nature, Henry Diamond, that was the owner of a partner in a big law company. And I agree with him, or he agreed with me, that if we lose a case in the Israel court, he will go to the American court on the ground that doing this plant of the Voice of America transmission station in Israel, as they do without environmental impact statement, they couldn't have done it in the state in according to the legislation over there. And he prepared it pro bono. The lawsuit was prepared, and when we won the case in the Israel court, I called him and told him that we won the case and there's no need to go to the court in the States. And he, of course, congratulated me, but he said he was a little bit sad that he didn't he won't issue and put this lawsuit in the state. So this is an anecdote, interesting one.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you one. I've got one amazing question from the audience. I think the last one for today. What do you think now that Israel's making peace with all our neighbors? What do you think the chances are for working together for on environmental issues in the region? And do you think SPNI could have a role in that?
First of all, there are some cooperation, which is a very, very interesting one. One of the projects of SPNI is to replace the chemicals that farmers are using against rodent by barn oils that can do the work much better and with no chemicals. In Israel, in this project, the farmers were convinced to put hundreds or thousands of artificial nests for barn oils, and it's working fantastic. It's doing the work. Such a pair of barn oils can have more than a dozen of chicks, and they're bringing more and more rodents to feed them. And it's a very successful project. The other interesting part is that there is a very good cooperation with the Jordanian in the Jordan Valley. And even though that the Arabs consider the barn oil as like a witch or something, that they are very afraid of them, but they started to put in a joint project barn oil's artificial nest in their plantation and in their fields. And this is very, very nice, very good incorporation. It's one of example. There's not many of them, but in this case, and several other cases, it did work. Of course, if the area the tension in the area will be gone or will be much less, the chance for such cooperation is much higher.
Great. Well, Yoav, thank you so much for your time this evening. We really appreciate it. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat to see what comments are coming in. I will say that Yoav has just published a book whose name I'm going to totally butcher, especially since I can't see it on my screen. So I'm just going to come away from my screen to where I made my notes before. So Yoav just published a book in Hebrew, which is called, I can't even remember what it's called. It's called Deshatar Shal Aretz, the landscapes of Israel. Have I said that right? And I will put the link.
Desha is actually in Hebrew, Dmuta Shel Eretz, the character of the land, or the nature of the land. This is Rashi Tevot. And in English, the English name is the Open Landscape Institute.
Well, I'm pleased that I can still butcher. I can still embarrass myself in Hebrew in a webinar where I just speak in English. So I'm very proud of myself. But Yoav, thank you so much. Thank you everyone who joined us and for your patience with the sound issues. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought on Facebook. Hello, all the Facebook people. And you can email me at international@spni.org.il. We'll be back again in 2 weeks' time for a presentation about the planning issues in Jerusalem.
And thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, and thanks the audience.
No, thank you. I really thank you. And yeah, we'll definitely talk more about the barn owls in a future week. I just need to schedule with the unique Yossi Leshem. That's yeah, we'll definitely talk about the barn owls in the future. And I'm starting to get everything ready for next year. So if you have any special requests, please let me know at international@spni.org.il, and I will try and find a speaker who can speak to that subject. I hopefully have got someone to talk about Israel's wetlands and amphibians. So that should be a really cool webinar. So Yoav, thank you very much. Everyone in Israel, have a good night, and everyone else have a great day. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Stay safe, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Once I